Good morning, everyone. This is Frank Donaldson, and we'd like to welcome you to our last class of this year-long online course in 25 Lessons Learned. We have a lot to cover today, and once again, hopefully we'll be able to wrap up the course in good style. What I'd like to do as we begin is actually go to the back of the book. And I'd like to start today with a prayer that is in the book. I believe we have used this once before, but I think it's certainly a good fitting to this closing class as we take a look at a prayer that was written actually for Archbishop Oscar Romero. And I think it really does play into what is the real focus of our work in Catholic school development, advancement, marketing. So let us remember we're in God's holy presence. It helps now and then to step back and take the long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is another way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No mission statement says all that should be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. But this is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces effects far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. And yet this enables us to do something, and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future that is not entirely our own. I think as we look at Catholic school development, this is where we all are. The fact that we plant many seeds, and in many cases we will never see them bloom, but yet we know we've planted them. And so as we take a look at this final lesson and we call to mind these thoughts from this prayer, once again recalling the dedication of the book to Dr. Michael Gilliatt, we have covered a lot this year. Without going through each of the lessons, we have covered a lot about the philosophy and fundamentals of Catholic school development, processes and structures, and then today we're going to have some parting thoughts. Without going in and recapping like I usually do all of these lessons, I'll kind of use the end slides to really call to mind what I think are some parting ideas and thoughts that I'd like to once again have surfaced. I also want to take this time to thank you for the testimonials. There are a number of you who took the time to write them. We are in the process of putting out promo materials for the online class that will start in partnership with the University of Dayton, and that promo material will be ready in June. And we are planning to use quotes from the testimonials. Even had 2 testimonials that came in this morning, and there's an indication in the survey at the end of the lesson today. If you'd like to jot a testimonial down that we could use, we would really appreciate it. But thank you for those of you who have written it. We have actually, as some of you may have seen, we have actually used this in one of our email blasts promoting our partnership with the University of Dayton. We have 2 more lessons. One, lesson 24, that I think really goes to the heart of some of the things that we have been talking about. Lesson 24 is called being open to change and shifts in thinking. I often call to mind when I first started in all of this years and years ago, the differences that have taken place over the years, and yet many, many of the same principles holding so true. And so there are some questions that we ask in this chapter, some questions that I think are very valid ones that really point to whether or not you are open to change and shifts in thinking. And in many cases, it doesn't necessarily mean you. It could mean your pastor or your principal or your president if they are not present taking this course. So the first one deals with lead buffalo of the herd or a gaggle of geese who share responsibility. And I think many folks are aware of the emphasis that we put on team. Together, everyone achieves more. And the whole idea being that being able to build teams becomes so important. When I leave today from this lesson, I'm going to be going to a parish and school here in the New Orleans Diocese. Our Lady of Perpetual Help. Father Kyle Dave is the pastor, and Kirsch Wilberg is the principal. And they have created over the last year a strategic plan for the parish and the school. We have engaged through surveys and through questionnaires, and mainly through planning sessions. We have engaged over 800 of their 1,500 parish families and parents. And they now have strategic initiatives. And what's more important as I look at this first bullet point is that they have 4 implementation teams. Each of these teams has 3 chairs, and each of these teams has between 8 and 12 people who have raised their hand to help them implement. And so we have a luncheon today that will move one of those teams forward. And that's one of the teams that's dealing with taking a look at a collaborative effort in regards to facilities, which grew out of the plan. So the team piece becomes really important. We talk about that, obviously, in the book. Second one, willing to invest and cultivate, or just interested in short-term results? And this is the piece that I think is a valid question. Just want the money? Or, once again, are you willing to invest your time and build those relationships? Process rather than program thinking. Program thinking would be, let's say, a program that you would put on like a golf tournament. A process would be the annual fund. Are you interested in, once again, those processes that make it all work? We believe, as you probably know, that development/advancement is a system of processes that are all connected, and we view things systemically. Building genuine relationships and with people or just going after the money, kind of similar to number 2. Change is a natural process or change is a crisis. Change is natural. I've often said that without change, without conflict, and the conflict doesn't have to be negative, but without it, many, many cases, that conflict is what brings about change. A piece of metal does not bend unless we put some fire to it. And so many times that change is key. And so as you take a look at shifting thinking and you take a look at being open to change, as you take a look at some new initiatives that you're trying to get off the ground, maybe this year or as you move next year into many things, always realize that there will be a group of people who agree and a group of people who do not agree. And these are the percentages that we see. In change process, we find that the innovators are the 8%, the people who are the dreamers and the innovators, and they are the ones who really move things forward. We find that 17% are leaders, and they walk hand in hand with the innovators. 29% are early majority. And in terms of the early majority, they will join you. And so as you look at that number right there, you see that those first 3 bullet points is more than 50%. But then there's the late majority. These are the people that want to cross the T's and dot the I's, and the late majority is not going to come on board right away. But they're not really real negative. They're just, they want to see how things are going to go. But then there is that 17% that we refer to as the destroyers. Hopefully your percentage is not that high, but as we look at it, who are the destroyers? These are the people that once again, been there, done that, won't work here, tried it once, didn't work then, won't work now. What do you know about what's going on here at the school? You're a brand new teacher, you're a brand new principal, you're a new development director. Why in the world should we do it that way? We used to do it that way. We found out that didn't work, or, we've always done it this way. Why don't we just continue on doing it? You must be out of your mind. My goodness, I can't believe you're even going to think about doing something like this. Or, the destroyers. They destroy us. Here's the problem. I never have problem with the 17%, quite honestly. Personally, what I have a problem with is that many times if you don't watch it, those destroyers can actually destroy not only your ideas, they could destroy some other people. And so as you put together the core team, as you put together your planning teams, as you put together your capital campaign teams and your annual fund teams, and you put together your alum board, and you put together groups like this, the teams that help you build those 6 areas of development advancement: constituent relations and communications and enrollment management and fund development and alumni involvement and fundraising events. Those 6 areas, as you build your teams and your processes, keep in mind that change can be onerous. And I understand, and many of you, I'm sure, have studied change process and realize that it does go through many stages and many levels. There is what we call the norm, which is what you're operating on when you begin in a new process. Then there is the second step, which is inform. In other words, informing people that you are going to be doing something differently. Then there is the alarm, step 3. And step 3, the alarm, is when the people who would be impacted by this says, oh my goodness, how is this going to affect me? And so alarms go off. And then step 4 is the storm, where all the destroyers start coming in. And then that storm, if you can get through it decisively with good leadership, that leads you to the reform, the reformation, so to speak, and that reform then allows you to reform into a new look of where you're going, and then finally your new norm that you'll be operating on. So just as you move through things, just be aware of this. There are wonderful books out about change process, but on a bird's eye view, on a forest level view, that's how change really does take place. And many of the things that we're talking about deal with change process. So once again, just wanted to call that to your attention. But in terms of that, lesson 24 does talk about this whole idea that we do have to realize change process does take place. And then the lesson does end. It's actually a quote that hangs in my office. It's not the critic who counts, not the one who points out where the weak one stumbled, or the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the one who was actually in the arena, whose face is marred with toil and sweat and blood, who errs and yet comes back time and time again, who knows the great sweetness of victory and the bitterness of defeat. And in the end, if that person falls short, at least it is done daringly, so that his soul may never be cast with those cold and timid ones who sit on the sidelines, complain and point fingers, and never even know defeat nor victory itself. Love that quote. Love that quote. Have lived by that quote all my life. Because as we move forward with things, many things have really worked well, and there have been things that in our world of development and advancement for the past 27 years that once again have not been met the best results, and yet at the same time, I often say learn from those and definitely move on. Lesson 25, is the one we end the book with. We have done a lot of speaking and a lot of talking in terms of exploring new sources of revenue. We have a premise, and basically the premise is the opening paragraph of that chapter. The age-old model of trying to fund Catholic schools with tuition, subsidy, and fundraisers is obsolete, ineffective, and will cease to sustain our schools in the future. And so we go on to say, we must stop the downward spiral of raising tuition when the budget does not balance, or telling the development officer to increase the annual fund money when with no strategies on how to make that happen, or adding more fundraisers, or freezing teacher salaries, or cutting out needed programs because they will throw off the budget. This premise we find alive and well. This week had a wonderful opportunity to visit and work actually with 7 schools in the Diocese of Buffalo. Then was on to working with a school in Missouri all day on Wednesday, afternoon and evening. And then here today working with the school. Was working at a school locally last night with the phone-a-thon. And I mention these to you because just this week, we'll have been in touch and been physically present at 10 schools, working with 10 schools and their leadership. That premise that I just gave you is alive and well. And so what we say, and we did newsletters about this several years ago, we said there's kind of a level 1 thinking about exploring new sources of revenue, and level 1 thinking is that we really feel that Catholic school leaders need to make a decision, and by leaders we mean on the diocesan level as well as on the parish level as well as on the administrative level in Catholic schools. Decisions need to be made, and band-aiding and closing and just once again continuing to do the same old. You know, we know over 2,000 Catholic schools have closed since the year 2000. We also realize that there are several that have, not several, there's a bunch that have opened. We were proudly say that we were part of the effort down in Baldwin County in the Archdiocese of Mobile, where a new Catholic high school is now in its 2nd year and thriving and doing very well. So as we say, as we talk about level 1 focus, you know, we maintain that leaders need to make decisions. We need to seek the best wisdom. Catholic schools, you know, must have a vision, you know, and be outstanding in all ways. What is your vision? And in working with schools this week, I asked that question. What is your compelling vision? Where are you going to be in the next year, 3 years, 5 years? How can you talk to a prospective family when you cannot share the vision? How can you talk to a prospective donor if you can't share the vision? Other than that, maybe all you're doing is inviting them to help you with your Band-Aid, you know? And so we really must have a vision. Without vision, we perish. What is the vision? What is that vision? What is that vision that's going to take us and really make things happen with our Catholic school? What is that going to be all about? You know, what is that going to be all about? Catholic schools must build strong faith communities. Are we Catholic or are we private? In our opinion, obviously, we must stand strong in our Catholic faith. Every single Catholic family must be personally engaged. We must engage every family that is part of us. They're partners with us, hopefully not just for the life of the time that their child is with us or children are with us, but they will be with us. All parishioners must be invited, convinced, and engaged. Parishioners, whether they have children or not, we must do what we can in making sure that the parishioners, whether we are a parochial school or a regional school, we must do everything we can where parishioners understand the value of Catholic school education. That kind of goes back to that first bullet point. Catholic school leaders need to make a decision. We need to make a decision. We need to say, are we going to be for Catholic education in Catholic schools? And if so, we can, guess what? We can be for Catholic schools, and we also can be for religious education, the CCD programs. We can certainly do that also. We can be for both. It doesn't have to be either or. Okay? And finance councils and Catholic school leaders must explore new frontiers. There are new frontiers. There are things that Catholic schools are doing across the country that is not just tuition, subsidy, fundraising. You know, there are schools that are doing things, and we're gonna just talk about that and share some of those thoughts. And once again, that becomes really important as we move forward. So let's look at it. Someone just asked the question: could I send a copy of the victory or defeat, that one about attitude? That's in the book. if you have a copy of the book, that's at the end of chapter, I mean, at the end of lesson 24. But if you don't have that available, I can certainly send it to you. Okay, so level 1 focus, I came across pretty strong with that, and I'll keep on coming across strong because I believe that our mission is to not just save where they survive, but to save where they prevail, our Catholic schools. So level 2 focus is let's take a look at 4 sources that make up those sources of revenue for Catholic schools. There is the family, there is the Catholic school, there is the parish, and there is the diocese. Now, all 4 of these entities have responsibility with the operational vitality of a Catholic school. All 4 sources have responsibility. And in our estimation and our belief, it is that all 4 sources share equally in responsibility. That doesn't necessarily mean equally in terms of financial revenue, but certainly equal in terms of responsibility for the growth and the vibrancy of that Catholic school. Whether you're a parochial school, whether it's a high school, whether it's a regional school, whatever the situation, we are responsible. And so with that in mind, the family, whether it's one child or a bunch, the same is tuition fees and fundraising support. But there are other things to explore. Notice the word says explore. It doesn't say go do. It says explore. Okay? So explore gifts in kind, gifts of professional service, money that the family quite possibly can generate themselves, cost-based, needs-based tuition, student working in the community, family work-study program. For example, my wife, Susie, works at Mount Carmel Academy in New Orleans. And Susie is in charge of 158 families who are on a work-study program, who primarily what happens is that the president of the school allows members of the family, the student, as well as grandma and grandpa and uncle and aunt and mom and dad, allows them to work in various areas of the school where she, in many cases, would have to pay for things like, for example, they build the set for the theater, for the spring musical. And so this counts off toward their tuition. The family needs to have a conversation every year with people from the school individually. You've heard that's a whole lesson that deals with that. Once again, I'm going to repeat it. You know, that lesson is powerful, and that lesson is the lesson that basically says build relationships, with your school families. So hopefully you remember, you remember that chapter, because that was the one that I said that was out of the box thinking. Build those relationships with, with your school families. That's lesson 7. Okay? Every family needs a conversation to discuss are there gifts in kind of the professional service, money the family can generate, cost-based needs. There are all kinds of conversations that you can have. There's all kind of areas to explore. And taking that further, the school, same old, would be tuition subsidy fundraisers. Need more money, raise tuition. Or, once again, there are development advancement efforts such as annual fund and capital campaign, endowment growth, plan giving, memorial giving, major gift portfolios. All of this needs to be explained, though. All of this needs to be explained. All of this needs to be explained in a one-on-one conversation with your parents and your families. They need to understand what the annual fund is. They need to understand there is a gap between what you charge in tuition and what it actually costs to educate their daughter and or their son. Okay? The school also can take a look at cost-based, needs-based tuition. Cost-based, needs-based tuition says this is what it costs to educate, your child, and this is, once again, based upon needs. We then are going to invite those people. Let's say it costs $10,000, and you in the past have charged, let's say $7,000. There is a gap of $3,000. Well, once again, the invitation to those people who can pay the 10, and then once again, conversations with those who cannot in terms of how you can help make up that and even those that cannot do the 7,000, conversations with how they can get further toward that ability. It's everyone's responsibility. If we believe in that, we can offer the opportunities. There are business and corporate sponsors. I have, school, that second to last one may kind of throw you off. Open a business. There's a school that took a classroom and made it into a printing shop. And basically the printing shop it handles all of the school's copying, but is also open to the public too. They do brochures, they do copy, they do this. It's sort of like when you go down to the Office Max or Staples or Office Depot and you go to the publications piece and they run off all kind of things. Well, guess what? They do it here at the school. They do here at the school. They've got a business. Also retail sales within the school. I'm not just talking about the bookstore. Okay, we have schools that actually are getting involved in that arena. Explore, once again, those new sources of revenue. The parish, the same old is subsidy. Whether you subsidize via per student, whether that student is your parochial school or your regional school, but once again, explore that. Exploring the total stewardship model from the Diocese of Wichita. That's a wonderful model to explore. And as I say in the book, that doesn't necessarily mean you go do it. It's just explore it. Exploring the godparent program. We have some parishes we've worked with where we've helped them establish a godparent program where, not a grandparent, but a godparent program where parishioners become godparents, quote unquote, to students who can't afford to go to the Catholic school, but we'd want them in the Catholic school. Maybe those students can afford $3,000 of that $10,000, and the godparent pays for the extra $7,000. Explore those new sources of revenue. The diocese, the ability to help schools, to help families, to offer opportunities, to work with state legislatures in terms of vouchers, but also to take a look at offering information, and many dioceses do this, of possible grants that schools can get, that families can get. There are dioceses that offer a diocesan-wide campaign for Catholic schools. And this once again provides that. In the Diocese of Buffalo, where I was Monday and Tuesday, there is a campaign that is wrapping up, to my understanding, and successful, and much of that money is going to go to the Catholic schools. A Catholic school foundation, that finds its derivation on the diocesan level. Seeds of Hope in Denver, and the Archdiocese of Denver. And then obviously exploring new governance through collaborative models and regionalization. Once again, and the list that I give you here of these 4 legs of the stool, the family, the school, the parish, and the diocese, these are just suggestions. These are things that we see that are happening. And once again, this is not to say this is limited. I'm sure that really a lot of people really have other things that they're doing, other things that they're looking at. I think at the heart of it all, I'm going to go back to a theme that I strongly believe in. I believe at the heart of it all is the very real fact that you have got to have a conversation with your families. When we were talking this past week with several schools, some of those schools have less than 100 students, and I said to the folks that we were working with, I said, what a wonderful opportunity, being a small school, where you, and what do I mean by that? It talks about it in the book. I don't want to go back to that lesson or that chapter, but it does offer an opportunity for you to really have a conversation and really explain, how the school is set up financially. Have a conversation where people can offer what they can do. Have a conversation where you can explain the annual appeal and the annual fund. We were wrapping up last night at Mount Carmel Academy here in New Orleans. As I said, where my wife works and my daughter graduated from last year. We were wrapping up the Parent Gap Drive last night. And we have approximately 1,000 families. And those 1,000 families, we have invited them to the gap is $2,050, and we're inviting those families to consider some type of one-time gift as the fiscal year wraps up to the annual appeal. And if they are unable to give financially, then we're inviting the gift of prayer. And we have a prayer card that was sent out to them and we're also inviting the gift of service, and so they're able to come on board and help us with phone-a-thons and the like. And it was, I went last night. We had 7 callers, and we had a free phone, so I jumped on one of the phones and probably called 3 sheets. There's about 18 names on each sheet, and I was able to get through 3 sheets over 2+ hours. Delightful conversations, just delightful. Probably 30% had to leave messages, but the others were able to connect with, because we make sure we have the home phone number, the cell phone number of the mom and the dad, and the business phones and all that. So cycling through those, we usually were able to talk to 60 to 70% of the people. Also clean up the phones that weren't working. But my point is, as we stand now, we have one more night of calling next Tuesday, but I'll venture to say that anywhere between 85 and 90% of these 1,000 parents will get their intention card in. Some of them will not be able to financially participate, but some of them will certainly offer their gift of prayer, and also certainly some of them will offer their gift of service. Thus far, we have over 200 people that have signed up for the gift of service, and we've been back in touch with them immediately. So once again, making those connections, making those connections. So as you look at these 4 stools, keep in mind as you explore those new sources of revenue, there were some talks in regards to some of this at NCA last week in St. Louis. Wonderful convention, those of you that happened to go. We had a wonderful time. We also had a wonderful time at a little dinner that we had on Tuesday night. Got to meet some of the students in the class and had good conversations. But as we move forward, I just want to go back to that premise that we indicate, that the premise being, if we always are going to look to the future and balance our budgets on tuition, subsidy, and fundraisers, then obviously we are going to have some real challenges. We've got to think outside of the box. We've got to take a look, as we said, at those avenues, those sources, those resources that we can certainly move forward on, and really key. As we kind of move forward and wrap up, got about another 15 minutes to share with you. Probably end a little bit early today. I know that many of you are busy. I can tell from all your emails of those who can and cannot jump on board, and some of you have to jump in and jump out. There are some questions, so in terms of that. Just a couple of parting thoughts, and then we'll answer some questions that have been raised, and then I'd like to close with something. Remember, as we've spoken, that Catholic school development, these are the major themes, is the meaningful involvement of people. I think the key word there is that word meaningful. And we've talked about it today. We've talked about it many times, that second bullet point of without vision, we perish. Are you able to articulate your vision? Where are you going? What is your school? What is compelling? And then that 7 eyes, once again, that being able to constantly identify, looking at the many tools in the toolbox to inform, personally invite, seek to involve. People will help you implement. They'll feel themselves as being a steward, and then obviously this is going to improve your development and advancement efforts. That quote we use, "A belonging leads to believing," and then the other quote that we used in the customer service component lesson, you're only going to generate as much revenue as you deserve to generate, and what you deserve to generate is always going to be in direct relationship to the quality of your Catholic identity, your leadership, your academics, your affirming culture, and your quote-unquote customer service. And then we talked about your wow. Many of you shared with us, and I shared some of that with class, people taking the class, what your wow is. And once again, I would certainly encourage you to continue on. The cover of the book deals with a pebble being dropped in a pond. And as you look at what is on the screen in front of you now, you will notice that first ripple is in many cases the ripple that most people deal with, and they never go beyond it. And how unfortunate. How unfortunate. The school that I was visiting with in Missouri on Wednesday, we're expecting approximately 90 to 100 people on May 9th to come, and they're going to move through a 3-workshop strategic planning effort that will engage many in the whole community. we will ripple out into the second and the third and the fourth ripples, all personally invited. That whole idea of realizing that Catholic school development advancement is indeed about reaching out, is indeed about engaging people, about building relationships. And I'll wrap up this last lesson with some more of that thought in just a minute. As we said, it all goes back to leadership and attitude. Once again, over and over again, is your leadership in place? Are the attitudes a yes, we can attitude? You know, one of the biggest challenges is moving from that reactive culture to a proactive one. The ability to make sure that you're not sitting there waiting for things to come to you, but you know, and many of the processes that we have talked about, you know, in this year, throughout this year, have been ones that have been proactive, you know, in terms of that. For example, I had a conversation when I was in Buffalo with the gentleman who's president of a board of a high school, and we went out to dinner that night, and he was going to be starting a search for he's president of the board for 17-18, and he was going to be starting a search for a president, and basically, you know, was asking, you know, what would be the best way to do it, and my response was, well, how do you plan on doing it? And being from the corporate world, he was going to hire a search firm, and he was going to put ads and things of this nature. I said, well, just want to share with you some language here. There's a difference between a search, you know, and there's a difference between a personal search and find with research attached. And he said, what do you mean by that? I said, what I mean by that is that if you have the time and you're in charge of this search to find a new president for your Catholic high school, I would be certainly having conversations with no less than 6 or 7 presidents in surrounding dioceses and picking their brains about their job and their job description. I would certainly be having conversations with the superintendents in surrounding dioceses and picking their brains. I would certainly be talking to those pastors, you know, and those principals in elementary schools and also in high schools that are making things click. I would certainly spend some time having cups of coffee and really finding people to make recommendations, to quite possibly offer suggestions of people that you should speak with. I would be out in the community proacting rather than reacting and waiting for a resume to come in through the mail or via an email, and then you sit back and with those 29 resumes, you simply react and cull them out and get the top 10, make a phone call that down to the 6 you want to interview, and then cull that down further to the one that you finally invite. I said, to me, that is reacting. That is reactive mode. Not to say that some of that process is not good, but I certainly would be inviting and sitting down. Never forget in my own high school how when I saw that a process was moving in that direction of just sending out ads to Catholic newspapers, putting it into Chronicle of Philanthropy, putting something online, sending something to NCEA, putting ads in Catholic newspapers in surrounding dioceses. When I saw that was taking place, all of which is not bad, but when I saw that was taking place, I picked up the phone and called the board president of my high school, and who lived out of state, and basically said, are you aware that you have about 4 or 5 really, really good prospective people that you need to talk with, whether or not they would be interested in the position or whether or not they could lead you to someone? And so my suggestion, here are those names. I really encourage you to come down and have a conversation, set up luncheon, breakfast, cup of coffee meeting, and speak with these folks, and just they can lead you to some really great ideas about what the job description is, as well as they could be able to lead you to quite possibly someone who could fill the position. Make a long story short, the person that the book is being dedicated to, Dr. Michael Gilliard, who passed away a couple of years ago, Michael had a luncheon with this board president and eventually became the president of that high school. React versus proact. Establish your core team. That's going to be so important to your success. Not a core team of 3-4 people, a core team of 15 to 18 people. The whole chapter deals with it. Remember, nothing is more important than enrollment. You could have the greatest technology, the greatest Catholic identity, the most wonderful chapel in your school. You could have the greatest science program. You could have the greatest turfing of your football field. But if you don't have students in the school, you don't have any of that to be able to be effective. AWE, it's an acronym we use a lot with parishes, but it also is applicable for Catholic schools. Continue to affirm, to continue to welcome, continue to engage. Be creative and open to change. And then lastly, just to call your attention in the book, one of the parting thought lessons was growing up on a farm was a great lesson in development. Because as I grew up on a farm, in fact, I'm sitting in my office right here on the farm as we speak. Growing up on this farm, I learned a lot about development. I learned a lot about cultivation. I learned that I could not plant the G90 corn and be able to pick it the next day, that great care had to be taken. And I also knew that there were ways to perpetuate the existence of those crops from year to year by using the various seeds. It was a great lesson and really became the roots of my philosophy in regards to Catholic school development. Let's answer a few questions by the old clock on the wall. I've got 20 minutes till the hour, but there are some questions that came up, and let's see what they are. I think there's several of them. Okay. Can you suggest the best resources to help convert pastors to be pro-school, like conferences, literature, YouTube, etc.? I mean, you know, that's always a question we get. And yeah, I mean, you know, the online course, we're getting ready to start with University of Dayton, NCA Convention, International Stewardship Conference, which is going to be in Atlanta this year. By the way, they're going to be opening up a school component in September. We're going to be speaking at that. You know, there is the book that, you know, 25 lessons. We're coming out with a workbook. There's some YouTube videos that we've posted that talk about all of this. I've, you know, once again, what I do when I have a pastor that really just doesn't understand the value, I usually try to connect them with a pastor who does. And obviously we have some of those that we've gotten to know. Just any of those would be good. I'd get them signed up for, you know, for the NCA convention next year for sure. We have a couple of schools doing the family work study and student work study approaches, but we're worried about tax implications, essentially being compensated for their work. Do you know of any guidance on this? You know, honestly, I do not know. I do not know. I've not gotten that deeply involved with it. All I know is that they do get deducted, not paid with a check, but that is deducted from their tuition. And then if they, let's say it costs $10,000 and they're able to work off $7,000, then they owe the school $3,000 at the end of the fiscal year. I do know that. Other questions? One more question here, and then we'll. Working at schools became due to liability. How is your wife's school bypassing that? That's not been an issue. This program has been in place at her school now for, oh gosh, 8 or 10 or 12 years. The whole piece is they're insured to the hilt, and so I don't have that kind of detail on it, but certainly could provide that information. Anybody interested, shoot me an email. I'll be glad to ask Susie if she, you know, she's wrapping up the year, so it's a busy time for her, as all of you. But certainly over the next month, I'm sure that she or the president could share some ideas about it, and quite possibly you can ask some questions about it. You know, once again, now would not be the good time. End of school year, as you know, as well as the fact the president, sister just had knee surgery 4 days ago, so now's not a good time for that. What I'd like to do, though, is I would like to share with you something that I think would be helpful. As I mentioned to you before, we will be starting the online class with UD. That online class will begin in August, and we are, as I mentioned about the testimonial, but I will be sending out promo on all this in case any of you quite possibly would be interested. Some of you have said that you wanted to take it again because you had to miss some classes. I understand that. And then also, you had other people that you would want to recommend. We are setting this up, just to let you know, where it will be cost effective. We're going to start with a 5-month course, 10 lessons in 5 months, and we're looking at that price being around $60 or $75. I told the University of Dayton that we were not interested in the financial compensation, but to use the money to pay our administrative assistants, the people who keep track of homework, the people who handle the technology. So that's the main purpose of that $60 to $75. So we want to keep it inexpensive, so we can have board members, we could have parents, we could have faculty, we could have staff, we could have development officers, principals, pastors, presidents, parent leaders, and others be able to take it. And that's the purpose of that. So what I'd like to do is and also those of you that have met the criteria for this year's class, we will be sending your certificates within the month. I'll be sending meeting with Jessica, going over who has done all of the work and who's attended the lessons, and then we'll be sending the certificates. We just sent a bunch of certificates out to that group in the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, and those certificates are going out. Actually, they're going out here within the next few days. I just got them in from the University of Dayton. They look wonderful. They do indicate a certificate of completion as well as a CEU credit. So all of that is on the horizon, and I did mention that we will have, in speaking with NCEA, we will have a workbook that will go along with this textbook, and that is, I got to get that to NCEA by June 1st. I'd like to close the class. First of all, there will be a survey, so please, answer those questions. They'll be very helpful. But I would like to close the class with the introduction that I've already written to the workbook that will be coming out in August. Haven't shared this with anyone, but I thought you guys would be a great one to share it with, and maybe any thoughts you may have. So as we wrap up, here is the introduction to the workbook. I believe that in order to be successful in anything we do, we have to have passion and a desire to be the very best that we can be. I often refer to that as fire in the belly. By that, I do not mean being the top dog or the star or the hot shot. I simply mean taking the gifts that God has given us, developing those gifts, continuously working to improve those gifts, and then making them work for the good of our causes. In our work across the country at ISPD, we see many people who possess that fire in the belly. As a side note, many of you that have communicated with me throughout this year, I can tell, have this. As pastors, superintendents, principals, presidents, development officers, board members, faculty, staff members, parent leaders, alum leaders, Catholic consultants, and believers in Catholic schools and parish life, we all have similar missions: to develop and advance our Catholic institutions by engaging people to help us build the kingdom of God. This is an awesome task and responsibility. As many of us know, this work is not for the weak of heart. It is not for those who quit early. It is not for those who want a quick buck or hit somebody up for money. Being part of a vibrant Catholic school advancement effort is rewarding, enriching, and fulfilling. Done properly for the right reasons, this ministry helps us to develop and grow as stewards. It puts order into our lives as we realize that our lives are not just about us. They're about doing God's work and what he wants to develop and advance. Properly understood, our ministry calls us to reach out as Jesus did, and despite the naysayers and those who only want to guard their kingdom, bring people closer to him. Over time, we develop a burning desire to draw people into our faith community and invite them to stand with us and walk alongside of us for a lifetime. In our Catholic dioceses and schools and parishes, we certainly can impact so many lives, so many lives. From that smiling face that gets out of the car in the carpool line in the morning, to the person we can see only at Easter, to the student or athlete who does not believe in himself. Directly or indirectly, we can make a huge difference. But where do we develop this passion? How do we come to realize that this work of Catholic school development is so much more than running a fundraiser or tapping someone for money? How do we get away from always measuring what we do by the question, how much money did you raise? True Catholic school development is much deeper, and so we invite you in this workbook to explore the ways that you can connect to its true meaning and to find and or rediscover that fire in the belly. What are the vehicles that led you to this ministry? And so for a very special reason, as background to this workbook, and as a continuation to the textbook published by NCA in the spring of 2016, I would like to share a part of my journey. In 1986, I lost my 5-year-old son, Dustin. He died of an illness that impacts few children. One day he was here, and then 4 days later he was not. What adds deeper meaning to his passing is that he started complaining about his legs cramping on Good Friday, and then he passed away on Easter Monday. In the Lenten season and our family's faith journey, it becomes greatly magnified through the memories of his death. Dustin was a very likable child, always smiling, always laughing, always having a cheery twinkle in his eye. He attended St. Rosalie Catholic School in Harvey, Louisiana, and was a favorite of many of his teachers and the principal, Sister Jeanne. He was elected King of the Mardi Gras at the school and loved every minute of the attention. He was hardly ever down or sad, and even when he was punished for doing something crazy, it was only a matter of minutes before he would bounce back. One day he came home from school and announced that he was going to be a priest, 5 years old and a priest. Although Dustin always had a smile and a kind word, he frequently battled with illnesses, and so that week of Easter it really wasn't a huge surprise when he complained about cramping in his legs. On Friday, his mother took him to the doctor, and then on Saturday he was in the hospital, supposedly just for precaution, we were told. By Monday morning, things turned for the worst as he was rushed to the operation room with a heart attack, and it was then that we realized that he might be in his last and final hours. I will never forget the doctor at Ochsner Hospital coming to us and in tears saying to me, "We have done all that we can do. He will not live much longer, so please now go and say your goodbyes." It's funny how moments like that are branded in your mind. I remember walking into the OR and looking at my son as he lay on an operation table. He was in pain, but he still had that smile. As I tried to maintain my composure, he looked up, and the last words that he ever said to me were, "Daddy, I'm going to be with Jesus." Dustin passed away Easter Monday afternoon at 3:42. The next year was a blur. I was offered a teaching job at teaching English at Mercy Academy in New Orleans during that 86-87 school year. Sister Mary Ann Hardcastle hired me. I really don't know how I made it through that year. The pain was great, and getting up every morning was a chore. All of us who have lost loved ones know the feelings and the struggles, and yet there is a faint desire to overcome and build something that will take us to the next day. Two thoughts kept running through my mind that year. I once had a sociology teacher in college, Dr. Ben Kaplan, who once told us that it is much better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. I remembered that, and I also remember my son's last words. Those were the two threads that I had hung on to, one of hope and one of faith. Time moved on and healing began. Life may shut a lot of doors, but God always gives us a window somewhere. We just need to find it. Gradually, the pain moved into energy, and I developed a strong desire to do something meaningful, something that would make a difference. I moved into administration, then into development at Mercy Academy, and then in 1989, there was a voice inside of me calling out to begin a new ministry. And so with a leap of faith, I left the security of a regular Catholic school paycheck and started the Institute of School and Parish Development, and I've never looked back. The fire that burned so strongly back years ago is still alive and still as powerful as ever. So many times as I leave home and head out on the road for another week in another city, I ask myself, why am I doing this? And the answer comes back immediately. You do it because of Dustin and because you have gifts to share and a family that believes in you and supports you. There was a reason my son was able to say what he said, and I owe that to the faith community of St. Rosalie Parish and School. They were very instrumental in developing Dustin's faith, so much so that he even considered being a religious, and so much so that his final words echoed his belief in his Maker. He did not get to that point alone. A pastor, a principal, teachers were greatly responsible for bringing him to that point in his life, and I cannot help but believe that Christ was there to hold his hand as he crossed to the other side. The death of my son was the birth of this ministry. In my anguish, God gave me a lifeline and hope for the future. I've been blessed countless times since 1986 with my wife Susie and my daughter Megan and my older daughters Lisa, Shannon, and Cherie, and 9 grandchildren. In fact, my oldest grandson, Jordan, was born the day after Dustin's birthday, September 26th. God does work in very wonderful ways. Years ago, we started the Dustin Ewing Donaldson Memorial Scholarship at St. Rosalie, where at graduation a member of our family has the opportunity to award an outstanding graduate who is going to continue his or her education in a Catholic high school with scholarship money for their first year. The faculty and staff vote for the recipient based upon the traits we always attributed to Dustin: courage, pleasing, smiling personality, always reaching out to help others, unconditional love, belief in the love of Jesus Christ, polite and well-mannered. A plaque with Dustin's picture and the name of the recipients for each year hangs in the lobby of St. Rosalie Catholic School in Harvey, Louisiana. Fire in the belly. It pushes us onward and brings about introspection, motivation, and purpose. My journey is not unique, but there are hundreds just like me. However, my quest has always been the same: to work with the diocese or a Catholic school or a parish, and through the gifts God has really given, to make a difference in helping build a stronger faith community, and possibly even in the smallest degree, through this ministry, help bring others and myself closer to Christ, so that we all, in our final hour, might be able to say, Daddy, I'm going to be with Jesus. With that background into my motivation, let us bring purpose to this publication. In 1989, when I was trying to find a good name for this company, several colleagues and I were talking about possibilities. We came up with a lot of ideas, all of the way from using my name and adding "and Associates" to a catchy name like Mission, Vision, and Message. But as we probed further, we ended up asking the question, what will be the main purpose of this Catholic consulting firm just getting ready to open business in the late 1980s? Using that context, the answer was clear. We wanted to teach, and thus the name Institute of School and Parish Development was born. The word institute says it all. Webster's two definitions of the word are an organization created for a particular purpose, such as research or education, or an intensive course of instruction on selected topics relating to a particular field. After teaching in Catholic schools for over 20 years, I thought that I would miss the classroom, but as the years have rolled by, I've come to realize that our firm finds its roots in teaching, coaching, and mentoring. So much of what we have done with our on-site consulting, workshops, and classes, and our phone consults is to teach people about Catholic school development, advancement. And eventually this led to our mission, bringing people, process, and ministry together to help build the kingdom of God. In the spring of 2016, NCA released a publication called 25 Lessons Learned in 25 Plus Years in Catholic School Development. It is our hope that the book would catch on, and it seemed to have caught on. When I was recently at NCEA, they indicated that it had moved to a second printing. With feedback from my online students this past year, as well as an online on-site workshop in the Diocese of Pensacola, the idea of writing a workbook to accompany the text became appealing. And to add to that, in March of 2017, we announced a partnership with the University of Dayton in order to teach courses in Catholic school development and marketing. The workbook follows the order of the lessons in the book, and each lesson has work pages as well as questions for students to ponder and discuss. As we have said many times since the book is released, the lessons we share are from many experiences that we have learned across the country. Today, we live in a time where Catholic schools are battling. We're battling for relevancy, we're battling for identity, and we're battling to make sure we have a firm fitting in the marketplace that does not always see the value of Christ being the center of everything. Our Catholic faith is constantly being challenged and tested. And besides our places of worship, we do have Catholic schools where every day students, administrators, faculty, and staff members have the opportunity to pray, worship, and learn more about the beauty of our faith. Catholic schools provide the opportunity for us to meet Jesus Christ and to grow in his love. My son did, even though he was only 5 years old when he passed away. His Catholic school provided that opportunity. And so it is my belief that we must do everything we can to make our schools thrive. The lessons we have learned through the years here at ISPD have possibly helped this cause. I pray this will be true. And it's so in this spirit that we present this workbook to go along with the text, in the hope that in some small way what you learn may be a spark, may be a catalyst for the fire to burn even brighter inside of you, a fire that roars with the belief that our Catholic schools are irreplaceable and serve as wonderful beacons of light in numerous communities all across America. So I thought I would leave you with that. I appreciate you hanging on and listening and giving me the opportunity to share that with you. Our future as we move on continues to be a very bright one, in the sense that we will continue to teach, we will continue to consult, and we will continue to do everything we can to help Catholic schools prevail and not just survive. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thank all of you for such your kind comments that you have sent. I look forward to continuing to meet many of you as we continue across the country. And once again, as we move forward, we will be sending more information about where we're going as a company and obviously opportunities in our company as we look to the future for people like yourself who really are true ministers and people that really believe in the future of Catholic schools. There is a survey that will pop up, and we ask you to answer it. This has been a great pleasure for me. Thank you again for listening to this rather long closing to this year's class. I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you. God bless, and hope to see you as we move forward, and please let me know if we can share or do anything for you. Thank you so much. Bye now.